They laughed at Earth, laughed at humanity, laughed at the ship we sent into the dark. Out there, beyond the veil of stars, the galaxy was already ruled by empires thousands of years older than us. They had ships that moved faster than light, like it was nothing. Weapons that could erase moons, shields that could hold a dying star in place. So when humanity first showed up at the Galactic Summit, we were the joke. Our best engineers barely managed to build one interstellar vessel, the UNS Vengeance. A bulky, black monstrosity of metal and heat shielding that looked more like a relic than a starship. They called it primitive. They called it a flying coffin. They called us fools, but they didn't know us. The Vengeance was ugly, yes. Thick armored plating. No fancy plasma drives. No sleek designs. No glowing quantum fields or shimmering warp rings. Just raw human engineering. Giant rotating thrusters. Nuclear cores. Heavy railguns. Slug throwers instead of beams. Turrets that needed manual aim. It was industrial. Angry and unapologetically human. They saw an ancient machine built by children. We saw a weapon forged in desperation because Earth was dying. Not from war, not from pollution, but from being forgotten, ignored, kept away. For centuries, we begged to join the intergalactic accord, to trade, to learn, to be part of something bigger. They always said we weren't ready, always turned us away, until we stopped asking. That's when we sent the Vengeance. On board were only 42 humans, soldiers, scientists, a captain nobody outside Earth had heard of, and a mission no one else would have dared to attempt. Force the galaxy to notice. The first encounter was with the Vokari, 8-limbed diplomats with skin like gold foil and egos twice that size. Their ship was beautiful, a silver orchid floating in space. When they hailed us, their ambassador's voice oozed with superiority. "You have breached accord space," he said. "Surrender your vessel for inspection." Captain Delane stood there, arms crossed, staring into the screen. Grey-bearded, broad-shouldered, scar across one eye. "No," the ambassador blinked. "Excuse me?" "We don't answer to you," Delane said. "And we sure as hell don't surrender." The Vokari laughed. Actually laughed. Then fired a warning shot. A clean pulse of energy that skimmed our hull. Didn't even dent it. That's when they made their mistake. They assumed we'd be afraid. That we'd back down. Delane didn't hesitate. "Target their engines." Railgun burst fire. 1 second later, the flower ship exploded. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't clean. Just a kinetic slug moving so fast it tore through alloy, power cores, and bodies like butter. No shields could stop it. No tech could predict it. The Vokari never saw it coming. The Accord panicked. They called it terrorism. They called us savages. But we didn't run, we stayed. Kept pushing deeper into space, toward the core systems, into the heart of the galactic elite. And with every planet we passed, every fleet we faced, the Vengeance proved something. We weren't weak. We weren't backward. We weren't scared. By the time we reached the Ossarin line, the border of the Dominion's core, we had a trail of wreckage behind us. Not because we wanted war, but because they kept testing us, poking us, trying to put us back in the cage. And every time we hit back harder, because the Vengeance wasn't just a ship. It was a message. Our giant metal middle finger to every empire that had ever looked down on Earth. "You call us primitive," Delane once said in a broadcast that spread across the stars, "but you mistake simplicity for weakness. You mistake grit for ignorance, and you mistake our silence for submission. You'll learn, one way or another," and they would, because soon they'd send more than patrols. Soon they'd send armadas, and the Vengeance would be waiting. The stars blurred past as the Vengeance cut through the black, like a steel blade through silk. Inside, there was no celebration, no cheering, no sense of victory after the Vokari ship was destroyed. Just silence, cold, tense silence, because everyone on board knew that wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Captain Delane stood in the command deck, hands behind his back, staring out the panoramic window that faced the forward path. He wasn't a man of many words, but when he did speak, his crew listened. "They'll come for us now," he said. "Not envoys, not patrols, fleets, maybe whole armadas." Lieutenant Mara Sang tilted her head slightly from her console. Her buzz-cut hair, scars running down one cheek, and tactical vest told the story of someone who'd survived more than one planetary war back on Earth. "Let 'em," she muttered. "We've got teeth too." Delane didn't smile. He never did, but a flicker passed behind his eyes, not joy but recognition. "We do, But they've got more ships than Earth has bullets. Can't we're sitting inside their playground now? So what's the plan? Came another voice. Commander Rios, weapons officer. Tall and wiry with eyes always twitching like he saw things seconds before everyone else. Keep flying and hope they get tired of chasing us. No, Delane said. We don't run. We send another message. He turned and faced the command crew. The lights in the room flickered, not from power fluctuation, but from the sheer strain of the engines running non-stop for nearly 3 weeks now. The Vengeance wasn't meant for stealth or comfort. It was a fortress strapped to rockets. Everyone on board knew that. And they were all volunteers. We hit a military target, Delane said. Something big, strategic, no civilians. Sir, Mara said, you really think they'll care about no civilians after what we did to the Vokari? No, he said. But we will. The target was chosen. Outpost Narith, a Dominion listening post orbiting the gas giant Eros 9. Small moon-based station, roughly 200 personnel. But more importantly, it linked the Dominion's communications in the sector to the central spine near Zella Prime. Knocking it out wouldn't cripple them. But it would hurt. And it would be loud. The journey to Eros 9 took 4 more days. In that time, the crew settled into a rhythm, not of peace but preparation. The Marines prepped boarding gear, even though everyone knew there'd be no boarding. The engineers double-checked reactor seals. Artificial gravity flickered twice and no one even flinched. They were getting used to it now, the groaning of ancient metal under pressure, the dim red lights, the way the air tasted faintly of iron and oil. The ship was alive in its own way, not sleek, not friendly, but alive. And angry. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Toma grunted as he banged a wrench into a misaligned piston. Old girl's thirsty, he muttered. Guzzling more deuterium than a black hole at happy hour. She gonna hold? Asked one of his assistants. Toma looked around, not at the machine, but at the walls, the pipes, the heat. She always does. She's too stubborn to die. They arrived at Eros 9 just before orbital dusk. The gas giant below cast long shadows over the icy moon, giving it an eerie purplish glow. The Dominion didn't expect company, at least not from humans. Shields up, Delane ordered. Bring us in low under their horizon. The ship dipped, angling beneath the comm relay towers. With no warp drive, Vengeance was slower than its enemies. But it didn't need to be fast. It needed to be close. Close enough to punch through, Commander Rios, Delane said. Primary railguns. Full charge? Give me a hole. Aye, sir. The railgun ports opened on the ship's dorsal side. Massive rotating cylinders that fired 100-kilon tungsten rods at speeds approaching Mach 35. No heat signatures, no energy emissions. Just raw kinetic death. Rios fired. There was no sound in space, but if there had been, the scream of metal tearing through armor would have shaken bones. The first rod tore through the station's main sensor array. The second shattered a hangar bay before anyone inside even had a chance to scramble. The third went straight through the communication relay tower, slicing it clean in half. Direct hits, Rios said. They're blind, Delane didn't blink. Send the message. Lieutenant Mara typed in a coded transmission. Short, brutal, human. You ignored us. You laughed at us. Now you'll hear us. Earth is not your pawn. More coming. It was sent on all Dominion public and encrypted channels. It would spread fast. It was meant to. Within minutes, long-range sensors flared. They're coming, said Mara. 3 cruisers inbound from Zella Prime. ETA, 11 minutes. Time to finish this, Delane said. Target their core. A deep hum filled the ship as the plasma lances charged. The only piece of advanced tech on the Vengeance. Stolen from a failed Martian experiment decades earlier and retrofitted by madmen who didn't believe in rules. Lances ready? Rios said, fire. The plasma lances fired twin beams of ionized hell, white-hot, barely contained, and unstable as hell. They weren't meant for accuracy. They were meant for destruction. The core of Outpost Narith went critical. From orbit, it looked like a small sun flaring out of the ice. The entire station detonated, sending debris spiraling into Eros 9's thin atmosphere. For a moment, there was peace. Then the Dominion cruisers dropped out of FTL. They were sleek, dark blue metallic bodies with shifting hull plating and glowing blue engines. Their weapons were elegant, their systems precise. Each cruiser outclassed the Vengeance on paper 10 times over. Their shields could deflect small asteroids. Their torpedoes had AI guidance. They were faster, smarter, newer. They hailed us, a female voice, calm and clipped. "This is Commander Thessa of the Dominion Starfleet. You have committed an act of war. Stand down immediately." Delane stepped forward, unbothered. "This is Captain Elias Delane of the Earthship Vengeance. We've committed an act of memory, so you remember we exist." "You are primitive," she replied, voice rising. "You will be dismantled." "You're welcome to try," Delane said. Then he cut the comms. "Rios, scatter missiles. Set targeting to erratic." "Yes, sir." The Dominion cruisers advanced, forming a triangle pattern. Their intent was obvious: surround and disable. But the Vengeance didn't play by their rules. From every hidden bay along its hull, Vengeance launched missiles, dozens of them. But they weren't guided by smart AIs. They weren't clean, elegant weapons. These were dirty, unpredictable, barely stabilized warheads with randomized thruster patterns, old Earth tech repurposed for chaos. The cruiser's shields flickered as they tried to adjust. One got hit, just a scrape, but enough to destabilize its outer plating. Rios followed up with a railgun shot that cracked it open like a soda can. Another cruiser fired a plasma lance, brighter, stronger than Earth's. It struck Vengeance's side, blasting a chunk of armor into space. Sparks rained down in engineering. Fire alarm screamed. "She's hurt bad," Toma shouted. Main coolant lines breached. "She won't take another hit like that." Delane didn't flinch. Then we hit harder. "Prepare the lance for overload." "You're gonna blow it." "I know." The final strike was reckless. The plasma lance was fed more energy than it could safely handle. It would fire once and then be useless, maybe explode. But it was their only shot. The second cruiser loomed ahead, charging its own weapon. Delane whispered, "Not this time. Firing now." The overloaded plasma lance spat out a beam so unstable it bent the surrounding space for a moment. A twisting line of white fire that slammed into the Dominion cruiser and tore through its center like a blade. The ship snapped in two. Internal explosions cascaded along the hull. Only one cruiser remained. It turned. Ran. The Vengeance didn't chase. Delane stood in silence again. The command deck smelled like smoke. Blood dripped from a gash over Mara's eyebrow. Rios's console sparked and hissed. Toma was screaming something about the reactor needing a manual shutdown before it melted the floor. But none of that mattered in that moment, because they had won again. They, the primitives. The Dirtborn. The forgotten. Out there, the galaxy was watching now. Broadcasts were already spreading. Not propaganda, not government-approved speeches, but raw footage of the Vengeance, of Earth's ship tearing through the stars like a beast unchained, of Delane and his crew defying empires with metal, grit, and blood. It wouldn't last forever. The next battle would be harder. The enemy would learn. They'd adapt. But Earth wasn't asking for forever. We were just asking to be heard, to be seen, to be remembered. And the Vengeance made damn sure we were. Smoke still clung to the corridors of the Vengeance like a stubborn ghost. Fire suppression had done its job barely, but the aftermath of battle was worse than the chaos itself. The crew didn't talk much. They were too busy keeping the ship alive. That was the thing about war. It didn't end when the shooting stopped. It lingered in the walls. It rattled in the bones. In the medbay, a young technician, barely out of his 20s, sat on a cot, holding his arm awkwardly. The sleeve was shredded and soaked in red. "You're lucky," the medic told him, wrapping a bandage tight. 2 inches higher and that shrapnel would have taken your eye." The tech didn't answer, just nodded. He kept staring at the ceiling, where a hairline crack in the bulkhead was slowly dripping coolant. It looked like it was bleeding. Across the ship, the damage was everywhere. The portside armor plating had been caved in. One of the railgun systems was jammed. The barrel warped from heat stress. Reactor efficiency was down to 63%. Life support in Section 7 was completely offline, and in engineering, Chief Toma was swearing loud enough for everyone to hear it. Damn this ship. Who the hell designed a coolant loop to run next to a goddamn missile bay? "I think it was the Chinese Mars team, Chief," one of the engineers replied, wiping sweat from his face. "Then the whole damn Mars team needs their licenses revoked. Give me 30 minutes and a miracle, or this whole bird's gonna cook itself from the inside." Delane was everywhere, watching, helping, silent. He moved like a ghost through the ship, stopping only to give orders or ask questions. He didn't need to raise his voice. His presence was enough. The crew trusted him, even if he rarely spoke more than a sentence at a time. In the command deck, Marasang leaned over her console, eyes scanning dozens of flashing readouts. "They're calling us terrorists now," she said without looking up. 3 Accord planets already issued statements. Dominion broadcasts claiming we attacked a peaceful outpost unprovoked. Vokari leadership wants to charge us with war crimes. Rios snorted, leaning back in his chair with a bruised rib wrapped tight under his vest. "Of course they do. That's what happens when someone throws a rock through the window of the elite." "They're scared," Delane said. Mara raised an eyebrow. "You think so?" "They've been scared since we took out the first ship. That's why they're screaming so loud." Rios pointed to the long-range scanner. "We won't have time to argue about PR anyway. Looks like a fleet's gathering near the Helix Ridge. 20 ships at least, mostly cruisers and recon destroyers. Are they moving?" "Not yet, but they will. They're probably waiting on the big ones." Delane stepped closer to the forward display. He looked at the stars. Looked through them. He could almost feel the weight of the galaxy pressing down. All the power, all the history, all the eyes suddenly locked on one single ship from a forgotten blue world. "Let them gather," he said finally. "We'll be gone before they blink." "Where to?" "Earth," Delane said. Rios turned slowly. "So, you serious?" "Dead serious." Mara narrowed her eyes. "Captain, we can't lead them back to Earth. If they follow us—" "They won't follow," Delane cut her off. "Not yet. They're not ready to risk a war with a species they still don't understand. Not after what we did. But we need to go home. We've proven we're a threat. Now we show them we're not alone." "You think they'll believe that?" Rios asked. Delane finally turned to face him. "They will when they see the next ship we're building." The Vengeance had been gone from Earth for nearly a year. Most of that time was spent in deep space, hiding, gathering intel, striking targets to get attention. It was never meant to be a conqueror. It was meant to wake humanity up, to scream into the void and force the void to scream back. Now it had. Returning wasn't going to be easy. Earth was on the edge of the Accord's restricted zone. To get back without being tailed, the Vengeance would have to drift. No engine burns. No transmissions. Dead silence. A month-long voyage through black emptiness, barely holding together. They called it ghost running. No lights. No heat signature. Just float and pray. Delane gave the order. The ship powered down in stages. Non-essential systems were shut off. Gravity was turned to minimum. Food had to be rationed. The lights dimmed until the hallways looked like haunted tunnels. People whispered instead of talking. Everyone breathed slower, moved slower, thought slower. Time crawled. Mara spent most of her days watching space. She grew up on a floating city in orbit around Europa, but she'd never seen stars like this, not without filters, not without noise. It was raw now, beautiful in a terrifying way, a reminder that out here humans didn't matter, that every scream from Earth was just an echo inside a void that didn't care. On the 12th day a sensor pinged, unidentified movement. She whispered into the comms. Mid-range. "Small vessel. Fast." Delane arrived seconds later. Rios was already at the console. "They're not broadcasting anything," he whispered. "Trajectory is weird. Like it's searching." "Scouts," Delane said. "They're hunting." Rios's jaw clenched. "We stay dark, right?" Delane didn't answer right away. The little ship on the scanner was getting closer. Not fast, not aggressive, but curious. If it got too close, it might pick up the Vengeance's residual heat signature. Even dead ships give off a ghost of a signature. "If it gets within 500 clicks," Delane said, "fire one EMP and move." "Just one?" "If we fire more, they'll know we're not alone. One makes it look like an automated mine. Ghost tech. Old war debris." Rios nodded and watched the scanner. The tiny dot moved, too close. Firing EMP. The pulse fired from an old satellite pod attached to the hull. Low tech. No flare, no engine burst. Just a shockwave of electronic death. It hit the scout. The little dot flickered, wobbled, then vanished from radar. Rios didn't cheer. No one did. They just waited. 2 hours passed. No other ships came. No sign of retaliation. They'd fooled them. For now, the final leg of the journey was quiet. Even the ship seemed to sigh in relief when the Sol system finally came into range. the familiar speck of the sun, the tiny dots of the planets, and then Earth, shining blue, wrapped in clouds, still spinning, still alive. The Vengeance didn't announce its arrival, but they didn't have to. Earth had been watching, listening, waiting. The moment the ship entered Earth's orbit, the entire Terran defense grid activated. Satellites pinged. Ground stations roared to life. Fighter squadrons scrambled, not out of fear, but to escort their warship home. Delane stood in the command deck, looking at his world. "They're building her," he said softly. Outside the viewport, anchored to Earth's orbital ring, was a second ship, unfinished but massive. Twice the size of Vengeance. Sleeker, yes, but still brutal, still human, still hungry. "Ans Requital," Mara whispered, reading the name etched into the hull. Rios whistled. "Now that looks like a ship ready to kick down heaven's doors." "She's not ready yet," Delane said. "But they've seen what one ship can do. Now they know we're not done." Earth welcomed them with no ceremony. There were no reporters, no government handshakes. Just engineers, military officials, and tired eyes. Delane met with high command, a room full of generals and scientists, all trying to understand what the hell he'd done out there. He didn't give a speech. He just showed them footage, wreckage, logs, transmissions, the raw, bloody truth. He told them what was coming. "They think we're animals," he said, "and right now we're still easy to cage, but we've scared them. If we want to survive, we can't stop now." Someone asked, "You think they'll come to Earth?" Delane answered, "No, not yet. But the moment we start winning too much, the moment they realize we're not bluffing, they'll bring the hammer down." A long silence. Then General Roth stood. He was old-school military. Brass buttons, clenched jaw, never smiled. He looked Delane in the eye and nodded once. "Then we hit them first." In the dark reaches of Dominion space, the news of the Vengeance's return sparked chaos. The third cruiser that fled had limped back home, half dead, with a warning. Humanity wasn't as primitive as they thought. Council meetings erupted. Factions split. Some called for extermination. Others called for caution. But the message was clear. Earth had teeth, and now Earth had more ships coming. The galaxy's game had changed. Earth didn't sleep anymore. Since the Vengeance returned, there was a shift. Not just in governments or militaries, but in the people. Cities ran their lights longer. Factories worked around the clock. Everywhere, from underground bunkers in Nevada to orbital welding bays above Beijing, people whispered the same thing. They're out there. They know about us. And they're coming. What had once been a distant idea, aliens, space wars, ancient empires beyond the stars, was now reality. And Earth, once considered a latecomer to the galactic game, was rapidly catching up. Out of fear, out of necessity, or maybe out of anger. The footage from the Vengeance had gone viral. At first, through the underground web, then mainstream media, then official broadcasts. People saw the wrecked alien ships, the Dominion insignias, the clean, cold arrogance in the voice of Commander Thessa before she was silenced by a human-built plasma lance. Humanity didn't just survive out there. It hit back. Now, every nation wanted to be part of the next fight. The UNS Requital, Earth's second warship, was still under construction, but its hull was already turning heads. 6 railgun turrets, 4 plasma lances, missile silos spread across both flanks, a rotating habitation ring designed for long-term voyages. It was humanity's answer to every insult they'd endured. But as impressive as the Requital was, it wasn't what scared the Dominion. What scared them was what Earth was doing next. They were organizing. In a deep underground meeting room beneath what used to be the Geneva Convention Hall, the heads of Earth's global military initiative gathered. Delane was there too, standing at the far end of the long steel table. Holograms floated above the surface. Diagrams of alien ships, intercepted comms, star maps, Dominion fleet structures. General Roth stood at the center, tall and silent. He tapped a button, bringing up the latest intelligence feed. "We have confirmation. Dominion fleets are reinforcing border outposts along the Sagan Line. 27 ships moved in the last 10 days. 3 stations fortified. 2 new sensor grids built near the Jakar sector." He looked around the table. "They're preparing for something. Probably not an invasion, and not yet. But they're tightening the net. The moment we show weakness, they'll snap it." A woman in a grey suit, Director Hanna Voss of the European Defence Bloc, leaned forward. Then we don't give them the chance. Why strike first? There were murmurs, some in agreement, others nervous, but it was Delane who spoke next. No, not yet. All eyes turned to him. We hit them now. They'll bring everything. And we don't have enough ships to match that yet. We need to bleed them, piece by piece like we did before. You want another guerrilla campaign? Voss asked. That's not sustainable. It's not meant to be, Delane said. It's meant to send a message, same as before, but bigger this time. General Roth nodded. Go on. Delane turned to the central holomap and tapped a red system on the galactic rim. This is Gareth 9, Dominion Communications Hub. Low military presence, high data throughput. Every fleet, order, every transmission, every internal directive passes through here at some point. If we take it out, even temporarily, we blind them. You think you can do it with one ship? Asked the African Union's Admiral Cole. No, Delane said. We send 3. He pointed to a second red-marked location near the hub. There's an abandoned Vakari dry dock here. If we hit that simultaneously, they'll think it's a full-scale offensive. They'll pull ships from their borders, spread their fleets thinner, and we'll still have teeth ready if they overreach. Roth folded his arms. You're asking for 3 ships. We only have 1 finished. The Requital isn't ready for deployment, and the 3rd is still being built. I'm not asking, Delane said. I'm telling you what needs to be done. There was a moment of silence. Then Roth gave a nod. Finish your team. Take the vengeance. You've earned your madness. The next days were consumed by preparation. The vengeance had barely been patched back together after its last campaign. But no one expected it to last forever. The ship was held together by hope and hatred, and a skeleton crew that refused to quit. Delane hand-picked every officer for the mission. Mara Sang stayed on as second-in-command, coordinating tactical operations. Rios, though wounded, returned to weapons. Chief Toma remained in engineering, threatening to quit every other day, but secretly fixing the impossible. New additions came in fast. Lieutenant Adrian Vex, a former orbital drone pilot with a reputation for accidental disobedience, joined as flight ops. Nobody liked him much, but the man could guide a ship through a black hole's eyelash. Dr. Leon, a medic from the new Singapore coalition, was brought in to replace the last ship doctor, who died saving 2 crew members during the Eros 9 blast. And then there was Marek. He wasn't human. He was Osirian, ex-Dominion, a defector. His skin shimmered with silver under light, and his voice carried that synthetic smoothness that humans still found eerie. But his knowledge of Dominion fleet routes and sensor protocols was too valuable to ignore. Some on the crew didn't trust him. Most didn't talk to him, but Delane didn't care. I'm not here to make friends, Marek said bluntly when he came aboard. I'm here because your people are stubborn enough to scare my former masters. And I want to live long enough to enjoy that. 3 weeks after planning began, the Vengeance launched again, but this time it wasn't alone. A second prototype, UNS Hammerfall, joined it. Smaller than Requital, lighter than Vengeance, but built for quick strikes and electronic warfare. It was commanded by Captain Amina Yusuf, sharp, relentless, and known for her tactical mind. The 3rd ship, Requital, stayed behind. It would be Earth's last line, in case everything went wrong. As the 2 warships moved out of Earth orbit, thousands of people watched from the ground. There were no parades, no songs, just silence, pride, and the quiet understanding that war had truly come home. Delane stood on the bridge, arms crossed. Course locked for Gareth 9, Mara said. ETA, 17 days at drift speed. We'll jump from the Sintergate and go dark after that. Calm silence? Absolute. No pings, no signals, not even passive scans. Good, Delane said. Let them think we've gone quiet again. In the Dominion capital, panic was brewing, though they'd never admit it publicly. Commander Thessa, the same one who had once threatened the Vengeance, stood inside a black council chamber. Her face was still half burned, her left eye replaced with a synthetic implant. She should have been dead, but she survived. And now she was furious. They've sent 2 more ships, she growled. Earth isn't cowering, it's expanding. High Chancellor Varun leaned back in his throne-like seat, eyes glowing with biotech implants. His voice was calm, but cold. You told us they'd be crushed. That they were children with fire. They're still children, Thessa hissed, But now they've set the forest ablaze. There is another option, came a voice from the side. A new face, a new player. Lord Atrion, head of the Dominion's Secret Intelligence Division. Thin, pale, never smiled. Let them come, he said. Let them strike our outposts, let them cause damage. And then what? Thessa snapped. Watch our systems burn? No, Atrion said slowly. Then we follow them home, not with fleets, not with battleships, but with something far more persuasive. He turned to the holomap, and a new symbol flashed over Earth. Infiltration, he said. Subversion, collapse from within. Thessa didn't like it, but Varun leaned forward. Begin. Back on the Vengeance 17 days later, the Gareth 9 system loomed ahead, a bright pulsating star wrapped in gravitational bands. Orbiting it were 3 stations, one of which was their target, Gareth Relay Core. Delane stood with Marek, reviewing final recon data. Still only 2 corvettes on patrol? Delane asked. Yes, Marek replied. They assume it's a safe zone, internal traffic only, no external threats. Then we give them a threat. Rios and Mara came onto the bridge, plasma lances charged. Missiles ready, railguns warmed. Good, Delane said. Cut engine heat, bring us into the shadow of the comm station, and prepare boarding units. Mara blinked. We're boarding this one? Delane nodded. We're not just blowing it up. We're taking their data. The Gareth Relay Core floated like a massive steel spine in the dark. It rotated slowly above the sun-scorched side of a dead moon, pulsing with quiet energy. Every few seconds, blinking lights rippled along its surface. Comm bursts. A reminder that this wasn't just a station. It was the Dominion's brainstem for half the sector. To most, it looked peaceful, unimportant, but Delane knew better. This place is the real enemy, he muttered, watching the relay's schematics rotate slowly on the bridge display. Not ships, not fleets. Information. They've built an empire out of what they know and what they hide. Mara Sang adjusted her comms headset and looked at him. You really think we can take it without turning the whole system red? We don't have to be clean, Delane said. Just fast. The Vengeance drifted silently in the relay's sensor blind spot, an area Marek had calculated down to the meter. The hammerfall held position in the moon's shadow, ready to interfere with comm signals if the station sent out a distress call. Inside the bridge, the crew was quiet, focused. The calm before the hit, Marek entered, pulling his long coat tighter, his artificial skin catching the bridge lights like liquid silver. He spoke, voice neutral but alert. 2 Dominion corvettes in orbit, not expecting an attack. They're communicating with a cargo freighter, coming in from the Terra system. Light chatter routine. Military personnel on the relay? Delane asked. Marek shook his head. Minimal. Technicians, officers, relay workers. Not soldiers. They don't expect sabotage this deep into their territory. Then let's give them a reason to expect it, Delane said. The boarding pods were primitive, old. Earth junk compared to the Dominion's sleek drop capsules. Big metal coffins packed with heat shielding, low-profile launch systems and zero guidance once deployed. No stealth, no elegance. Just brute force, exactly how Delane liked it. Rios oversaw the loading himself. Marines checked their rifles. Charges were handed out. EMP packs, jammers, rebreathers, all distributed in near silence. There was no speech, no rousing music, just the clank of gear and the slow rhythm of tension. Lieutenant Vex climbed into Pod 3, checking his helmet seal. Ever wonder how we're still alive? He muttered to Mara, who sat beside him. Not really, she said, eyes on her mag rifle. So that's how you jinx it. Too late, Vex grinned. The pods launched in staggered bursts, 3 black dots spiraling away from Vengeance's belly, burning hot for just long enough to hit trajectory, then going cold. From the station's view, they were just debris. Space junk, unimportant until they hit. The first pod slammed into an outer docking corridor, its nose melting through the hull, followed by a violent hiss of atmosphere. Inside, the team burst out, flash freezing 2 stunned relay techs with dart guns. No blood, no screams, just silence. The second pod cracked through a control spire, straight into a server corridor. Mara and Vex led the charge, sliding into the hallway and stunning 3 guards before they even unholstered their sidearms. The third pod, Delane's, hit harder than intended. The docking ring buckled under the impact. Metal screamed. Sparks flew. We're in! shouted one of the Marines, prying the hatch open. Delane led the way. Inside the relay, panic had started to ripple, but not fast enough. Most of the staff had never seen combat. They weren't trained to handle boarding parties. They sealed hatches. They locked doors. They sent alerts, all of which Hammerfall jammed before they got out. In the primary control tower, a female Dominion officer barked orders in panic. Seal central data vault. Wipe logs. Activate purge systems. But nothing worked. Human malware, crude by Dominion standards, had already wormed its way into the relay's security protocols. It didn't hack through systems. It overwhelmed them, crashed them, fried them. One technician stared at his flickering console and whispered, "What is this garbage?" "Earth," the officer spat. Delane's team breached the control room 2 minutes later. 3 shots, 1 concussion grenade. No survivors. Delane stepped over the Dominion officer's twitching body and approached the main terminal. Marek arrived behind him, already connecting his interface node to the relay's hardline. "This is it," Marek said. "Everything the Dominion transmits within this quadrant goes through here. Orders, deployments, even Black Ops." "Download it all?" Delane said. Marek worked quickly, his augmented fingers tapping data faster than any human could follow. Screens lit up with Dominion battle maps, fleet registries, encrypted comms. Delane's eyes narrowed as red-coded files streamed onto the drive. "What's that?" Marek hesitated. "I don't know," he admitted. "Encryption I've never seen before. Not military. Something deeper. Open it. It'll take time. Do it on the ship." Delane grabbed the data core, shoved it into the secure bag, and looked around. "Set charges. We're done here." Back on Vengeance, the Marines returned in staggered waves. No casualties. A few bruises. 1 cracked visor. The boarding was a success, but the data, something was wrong. In the war room, Delane, Mara, Rios, and Marek stood around the glowing interface as file after file decrypted in real time. Dominion ship logs, deployment schedules, minor tactical data, all valuable. Then the encrypted files opened. The room went still. They weren't about fleet movements, or territory, or war. They were about Earth surveillance logs, human psychological profiles, intercepted video feeds from deep within Terran society, conversations, personal messages, satellite footage, all of it, from years before humanity ever left the solar system. Delane's hands clenched the edge of the table. How the hell do they have this? Marek's skin flickered, his species equivalent of a shiver. "This isn't normal data collection. This is a project. Covert, high level." Mara scrolled through one log. Her voice dropped. "They were watching us before we even knew they existed. Studying us. Mapping our behavior, our politics, our fears." Rio stared blankly. "They've been playing us since day one." Then the final folder opened. Project Iron Veil, a single document. Redacted in 6 languages, but the message was clear. The Dominion had agents on Earth. They weren't aliens, not visibly. They were altered. Cloned to look human, grown in labs, trained in mimicry, dropped onto Earth in secret. And they'd been there for decades. Government advisors, CEOs, scientists. One file even suggested infiltration into the UN, Defense Council itself. Everyone in the room stared in stunned silence. Rios was the first to speak. "You think they know we have this?" Marek shook his head slowly. "If they knew, they would have torched the relay weeks ago." Delane's jaw locked. "This is the war," he said. "Forget fleets. Forget ships. This is how they beat us." From the inside, Mara looked at him. "What do we do?" Delane closed the file. "We go home. We expose it. We burn every last one of them." On the other side of the galaxy, in the Dominion's inner sanctum, Lord Atrian stood in front of a massive viewing screen. He watched the flickering image of Gareth Relay Core, last seen 2 hours ago. Before all communication stopped, he didn't look angry, he looked curious. Thessa stormed into the chamber, eyes wild. "They've hit the relay, wiped it. That's 3 direct strikes in 2 months. What more do you need?" Atrian raised a hand, silencing her. "They know." "What?" "They found the files." Thessa stepped back. "Iron Veil?" Atrian smiled, a thin reptilian smile. "Yes, they'll tear themselves apart. That's the idea." Back on Earth, the files from Gareth were already spreading, but not publicly. Delane only trusted one channel, General Roth. The old man read through the reports in silence. His face never changed, but when he reached the infiltration data, his hands trembled for the first time in years. How many? He asked. We don't know, Delane said. But more than we expected. They've been here since before first contact. Roth didn't speak for a while. Then he stood. This goes beyond military. We'll need to flush the entire global security network. We'll need AI sweeps, loyalty scans. God help us. No, Delane said. We do it by hand. One by one, quiet. If they know we're hunting, they'll scatter. And if they panic? Roth asked. Delane's voice was ice. Then we hunt them louder. Earth was bleeding. Quietly, you couldn't see it from orbit. The city still stood. The ship still flew. The people still walked the streets, went to work and smiled through their screens. But behind it all, beneath the surface, a silent war had begun. Delane had warned them. They've been among us for years, he said in every closed-door meeting. Every high-level briefing, every whispering conversation with people who understood the stakes. Agents, saboteurs embedded deep. Not just spies, architects, influencers, people who've been pulling strings without us knowing. Some believed him right away. Some laughed. Some disappeared. That was the first sign. The files from the Gareth relay were now under lockdown. Not because Earth didn't believe them, but because they proved too much. Names, coordinates, behavioral maps, algorithms tracking emotion, politics, economy. Earth hadn't been ignored. It had been farmed. Herded like cattle with holograms and lies, and worse, humanity had been infected. The purge began in secret. They called it Project Burnlight, a joint task force made of the most loyal, vetted intelligence officers Earth had left. Every agent was put through loyalty scans, stress tests, and neural mapping. Some still slipped through, but most didn't. Burnlight's job was simple: identify, isolate, eliminate, but nothing was simple. Because the Dominion's infiltrators weren't just hiding in obscure labs or on the fringe of politics. They were deep. One of the first found was a high-ranking advisor inside the UN Security Oversight Board. He'd served for 11 years. He was married, had kids, a dog. But when his blood was scanned, it didn't register as human. They found him trying to send a data packet into orbit. Burnlight moved fast. 2 shots, one to the head, one to the transmitter. His body melted, literally. Synthetic tissue collapsed into silver sludge within seconds. Bones softened. The last thing to go was his face. His smile never faded. As it slid down his jaw and pooled on the floor, they didn't show that. Footage to the public, but Delane saw it and he didn't sleep for 3 nights. After on the Vengeance, repairs were ongoing. The ship had earned too many scars to fix completely. Some hull panels had been fused together permanently. The reactor still had a growl to it, like it knew it wasn't supposed to be alive anymore. But Delane kept her running, because in his mind, Vengeance wasn't a ship anymore, it was a symbol. He stood in the hangar bay, watching technicians repair one of the boarding pods. Marek approached from behind, his silver-hued skin catching sparks from the welding torches. They're tearing each other apart down there, he said quietly. Delane didn't turn around. They have to. You're letting it happen. I'm letting them survive. Marek didn't argue. He understood. In his own way, he was a survivor too. I've seen the Dominion do this before, he said after a long pause. To other species. Not always with infiltrators. Sometimes with ideology. Sometimes with food. But the goal is always the same. Divide the homeworld. Break it before it ever reaches the stars. Delane looked at him then. And has anyone ever stopped them? No, Marek said flatly. Delane nodded once. Then we'll be the first. Back on Earth, Project Burnlight found 4 more. One was a university professor in New Delhi, specializing in quantum physics. He'd steered 3 major projects away from faster-than-light travel, subtly sabotaging Earth's potential without anyone noticing. Another was a tech CEO in São Paulo, whose satellites were quietly redirecting asteroid mining claims away from valuable zones, causing resource bottlenecks that slowed space development. The third was a military contractor in New Texas, a patriot on the surface, a saboteur underneath. He'd falsified safety tests on plasma coils, leading to 5 catastrophic failures in deep space probes over a decade. And the fourth was a popular talk show host. Her role wasn't military. It was psychological. She'd been spreading doubt. Encouraging submission. Talking up peace when it didn't make sense. Framing Earth's independence as aggression. Wrapping poison in kindness. Burnlight ended all four in one night, no arrests, no trials. Just clean kills. And still they barely made a dent. Inside a classified black site beneath Antarctica, the deepest files from Project Iron Veil were being decrypted. Marek had been granted access, working alongside Earth's best cryptographers. What they found horrified even him. "It's not just Earth," he said during a live secure briefing. "The Dominion's been doing this for a long time. To dozens of worlds. Most didn't even realize what happened to them. One day their governments started changing. Their religions evolved. Their languages merged. And within a few generations they'd forgotten who they were." Delane, watching from the Vengeance Bridge, leaned forward. "Forgotten?" Marek nodded. "That's the goal. If a species forgets what it was, it won't fight for what it could be." A silence settled across the comms. Mara, sitting beside Delane, looked at the screen with a haunted stare. "We were never supposed to make it to space, were we?" "No," Marek said. "But you did, and now you're the exception." The Dominion knew Earth had found the files. They didn't panic because they'd planned for this. Inside the Dominion's War Council chamber, Lord Atrian stood before the glowing galaxy map. Watching red dots blink across Earth's surface, markers representing known agents, sleeper cells, even remote influence hubs. Most had gone dark, but that didn't bother him. "Let them purge," he said calmly to the room. "Let them kill. Let them suspect each other. The blood they spill now will rot their foundations later." Thessa paced like a storm cloud. "We're giving them time. Every minute we don't strike, they build. They also divide," Atrian replied. "And we've planted deeper seeds." He pulled up a second map. This one of Earth's moon there, marked in invisible code, were 2 facilities. "One's not built by humans," Thessa blinked. "They already deployed structures." Atrian nodded. 10 years ago. They thought they were meteor impacts. Inside we've been growing something." "What?" Atrian smiled. "Insurance." On day 39 of Project Burnlight, Earth's moon lit up. One of the old craters, Shackleton Basin, exploded in a silent plume of dust and fire. A structure rose from within. Not metal. Not rock. Something in between. A black obelisk, 600 meters tall, humming with energy no human scientist could define. It pulsed once. Every satellite in orbit went blind. Every AI on Earth glitched. Every neural network screamed. And then, silence. Delane saw the flash from the Vengeance's orbit. He stood up. "Status," Rios checked his station. "I've got nothing. It's like half the sky just vanished. Send a probe." "We can't. Navigation's down. Everything's fried." Mara stared at the glowing object in the distance. "That's not a weapon," she whispered. "It's a message." Delane turned to her. "A message to who?" She didn't answer, because at that moment, the obelisk blinked again, and a signal, by told encrypted, "Alien," began broadcasting in all directions. Earth scrambled to respond. Tens of thousands of engineers, scientists and military analysts worked around the clock. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't attacking, but it was doing something. They just couldn't figure out what. Delane, furious, requested permission to take Vengeance to the moon and destroy it. Roth refused. "We don't know what happens if it dies," he said. "For all we know, it'll take half the planet with it." Delane didn't argue. He just left the call, then he went to engineering. "Toma," he said, "can we build something that'll fry a structure like that from inside out?" Toma didn't even look up, already working on it. That night, 3 cities experienced a total blackout. No EMPs. No attacks, just silence. The only connection? Each blackout zone had a power plant overseen by a senior technician, later identified as an Iron Veil agent. They weren't just watching now, they were reacting. Earth realized the truth too. Late. The infiltrators weren't trying to survive, they were trying to die, but take as much with them as possible. Suicide triggers. Hidden codes. Power grid links to Dominion tech buried beneath human infrastructure. Delane got the call at 0300 hours. Roth's voice was cold. "We've lost control of portions of the global power net. They're hitting our nervous system." "How long until systems collapse?" Roth hesitated. 4 days, maybe less. Then we have 3. The obelisk didn't stop pulsing. It sent its signal in timed intervals like a heart. 1 beat every 30 seconds. A flash of invisible energy that no one could trace, no one could block, and worst of all, no one could understand. Earth's brightest minds threw themselves at it. Physicists, linguists, AI theorists. Even theologians were dragged in, asked whether the shape or frequency had ever shown up in any religion, scripture, or myth. Nothing matched, nothing made sense. And while the world scrambled for answers, systems kept failing. The infiltrators were winning, they were dying off, yes. Burnlight had killed 62 confirmed operatives since the files from the relay had gone public. But it wasn't fast enough, not coordinated enough. For every one they caught, another 2 activated. They didn't run. They didn't hide. They just executed orders, calmly, methodically, suicidally. And the Dominion. Silent, they weren't coming with fleets. They weren't broadcasting demands. They weren't reacting at all. Because they didn't need to. Their plan was unfolding perfectly. Buried in the guts of human infrastructure. Systems that now answered to Dominion code. And it all started with that black monolith on the moon. Captain Delane stood on the command bridge of the Vengeance, staring at the projection of the moon's Shackleton Basin. The obelisk still shimmered there, a faint violet haze rising from its base. His fists were clenched behind his back, his jaw locked. "How much longer?" he asked. Chief Engineer Toma's voice came through the comms. 12 hours to finish the core stabilizer. Another 3 to mount it to the drone. Too long. It's antimatter, Captain. One wrong wire and the moon becomes powder. Delane didn't respond. Mara Sang, seated at the tactical console, glanced over her shoulder. "You planning to wait that long, sir?" He didn't answer that either, because he wasn't planning to wait. He was planning to go. Inside the Vengeance's lower bay, a modified infiltration pod sat ready. It had no weapon systems, no escape mechanisms, just a reinforced shell, a manual interface and a single seat. Delane stepped into the launch bay alone. No announcement, no orders, just a quick nod to Rios, who followed him anyway. "You're not serious," Rios said. "You want to fly into that thing? With what, a rifle and a grudge?" Delane opened the pod hatch. "If that obelisk is talking to someone, I want to hear what it's saying. You won't understand it. Then I'll blow it up. You don't even know if it can be blown up." Delane looked at him. "Then I'll find out the hard way." Rios sighed, rubbing his temple. "You're aware this is borderline suicidal, right?" Delane smiled. "For the first time in weeks." "Good, that's the only language they seem to understand." The pod launched 30 minutes later, before Toma or Burnlight could protest. By then, the Vengeance was already in low lunar orbit, cloaked in the moon's shadow. Mara stood at the controls. "Trajectory clear. No active defenses detected." "Because it doesn't need them," Rios muttered. "It's a beacon. It wants him to come." The pod flew silently. No lights, no signal, just a dark bullet tumbling toward the crater. Inside, Delane sat strapped in, staring at the object as it grew in the viewport. The closer he got, the more unnatural it felt. Its surface wasn't metal. It looked like stone, but sensors said otherwise. 0 thermal readings, no magnetic signature, and yet it hovered without touching the ground. It breathed. Delane tapped his comm. "Marek, you there?" The Osirian's voice came through, calm and cold. "Yes. You ever seen anything like this?" Marek paused. "Once. Where?" "A planet called Veru 9. It was erased from Dominion maps 300 years ago." "What happened to it?" Another pause. They touched something they didn't understand. The pod landed 400 meters from the obelisk. Delane stepped out in full exo-armor, rifle in hand, heartbeat steady. The moon was silent around him. No sound, no wind, no movement. He walked slowly, step by step, toward the impossible thing. It didn't react, didn't turn, didn't glow, just stood, towering, silent, waiting. As he got within 100 meters, his helmet HUD flickered. Then something spoke, not in words, not in sound, but in feeling, a pressure in his skull, a pull behind his eyes, memories, flashes, pain, his childhood, his father, his mother's funeral, the war that took his brother, the cold silence of space, the blood on his hands, the men he'd buried, the enemies he'd burned, everything. All of it slammed into him like a storm. He dropped to his knees, gasping, screaming, but only inside his mind. "You are violent," the presence said. "You are primal. You are not supposed to be here." Delane bit down, fought it, growled through his teeth. "Then why are you here?" he hissed. The obelisk pulsed. To stop you, you awaken too fast. You burn the stars. You kill before you question. You conquer to feel alive. We planted guardians. They failed. Now we must speak directly. Delane spat blood inside his helmet. I'm not here to listen. Then you are here to die. On the Vengeance. Alarms flared. Toma burst onto the bridge, panting. New readings from the obelisk. It's charging something. Mara slammed her hand on the console. Delane's still down there. I know, Toma growled. But whatever that thing's doing, we've got minutes. Delane rose slowly. He staggered forward. 1 foot, then another. I don't care what you are, he said. Alien, god machine, I don't care. You think you can threaten me? The presence thundered. You are nothing. Delane aimed his rifle at the base of the obelisk. I'm a human, he growled. And we've got a habit of killing things that think we're nothing. He fired. The pulse blast hit the obelisk with a flash of white light. For a moment it seemed to do nothing. Then it screamed, not out loud. Inside his skull, pain unlike anything he'd felt. Like a million knives behind his eyes. He dropped again, body twitching. But something else happened too. The pulsing stopped. On the Vengeance, all systems came online. Rios blinked. EMP field just collapsed. I'm reading power across the entire network, Mara gasped. He stopped it. Back on the moon, Delane crawled away from the obelisk. His helmet was cracked. His vision blurry. Blood leaked from his nose, ears, maybe even his eyes. But he was alive. The obelisk dimmed. Not dead, but wounded. He tapped his comm weakly. Get ready, he whispered. We can kill it. But not everyone was happy about that. Because deep in Earth's crust, buried in black vaults humanity didn't even know it had, something else woke up. Dominion fallback protocols plan Zeta automated. Sabotage codes transmitted through dormant. Satellites. Nuclear launch systems blinked. Water purification. Plants activated chemical release subroutines. Orbital. Defense systems retargeted Earth, all of it. Planned decades ago. A final card. A suicide pact. In Burnlight's headquarters, General Roth received the alert. He stared at the screen. This is it, a lieutenant beside him whispered. We don't have time to shut it all down. Roth looked up. Then we shut most of it down. He turned to the intercom. All hands. Priority Omega, full lockdown. Brace for systemic collapse. Above Earth, in low orbit, Vengeance fired its engines and raced toward the moon. Inside, Mara turned to Marek. This was never just sabotage, was it? No, he said, voice distant. This was execution. The obelisk didn't stop pulsing. It sent its signal in timed intervals like a heart, 1 beat every 30 seconds. A flash of invisible energy that no one could trace, no one could block, and worst of all, no one could understand. Earth's brightest minds threw themselves at it. Physicists, linguists, AI theorists. Even theologians were dragged in, asked whether the shape or frequency had ever shown up in any religion, scripture, or myth. Nothing matched. Nothing made sense, and while the world scrambled for answers, systems kept failing. The infiltrators were winning, they were dying off. Yes. Burnlight had killed 62 confirmed operatives since the files from the relay had gone public. But it wasn't fast enough. Not coordinated enough. For everyone they caught, another 2 activated. They didn't run. They didn't hide. They just executed orders. Calmly, methodically, suicidally. And the Dominion, silent, they weren't coming with fleets. They weren't broadcasting demands. They weren't reacting at all. Because they didn't need to. Their plan was unfolding perfectly, buried in the guts of human infrastructure. Systems that now answered to Dominion code. And it all started with that black monolith on the moon. Captain Delane stood on the command bridge of the Vengeance, staring at the projection of the moon's Shackleton Basin. The obelisk still shimmered there, a faint violet haze rising from its base. His fists were clenched behind his back, his jaw locked. How much longer? He asked. Chief Engineer Toma's voice came through the comms. 12 hours to finish the core stabilizer. Another 3 to mount it to the drone. Too long. It's antimatter, Captain. 1 wrong wire and the moon becomes powder. Delane didn't respond. Mara Sang, seated at the tactical console, glanced over her shoulder. You planning to wait that long, sir? He didn't answer that either, because he wasn't planning to wait, he was planning to go. Inside the Vengeance's lower bay, a modified infiltration pod sat ready. It had no weapon systems, no escape mechanisms, just a reinforced shell, a manual interface, and a single seat. Delane stepped into the launch bay alone. No announcement, no orders, just a quick nod to Rios, who followed him anyway. "You're not serious," Rios said. "You want to fly into that thing? With what, a rifle and a grudge?" Delane opened the pod hatch. "If that obelisk is talking to someone, I want to hear what it's saying. You won't understand it, then I'll blow it up. You don't even know if it can be blown up." Delane looked at him. "Then I'll find out the hard way." Rios sighed, rubbing his temple. "You're aware this is borderline suicidal, right?" Delane smiled. "For the first time in weeks." "Good, that's the only language they seem to understand." The pod launched 30 minutes later, before Toma or Burnlight could protest. By then, the Vengeance was already in low lunar orbit, cloaked in the moon's shadow. Mara stood at the controls. Trajectory clear. "No active defenses detected." "Because it doesn't need them," Rios muttered. "It's a beacon. It wants him to come." The pod flew silently. No lights, no signal. Just a dark bullet tumbling toward the crater. Inside, Delane sat strapped in, staring at the object as it grew in the viewport. The closer he got, the more unnatural it felt. Its surface wasn't metal. It looked like stone. But sensors said otherwise. 0 thermal readings. No magnetic signature, and yet it hovered without touching the ground. It breathed. Delane tapped his comm. "Marek. You there?" The Osirian's voice came through, calm and cold. "Yes, you ever seen anything like this?" Marek paused. "Once? Where?" "Fair planet called Veru 9. It was erased from Dominion maps 300 years ago. What happened to it?" Another pause. They touched something they didn't understand. The pod landed 400 meters from the obelisk. Delane stepped out in full exo-armor, rifle in hand, heartbeat steady. The moon was silent around him. No sound, no wind, no movement. He walked slowly, step by step, toward the impossible thing. It didn't react, didn't turn, didn't glow, just stood, towering, silent, waiting. As he got within 100 meters, his helmet HUD flickered. Then something spoke, not in words, not in sound, but in feeling a pressure in his skull, a pull behind his eyes, memories, flashes, pain, his childhood, his father, his mother's funeral, the war that took his brother, the cold silence of space, the blood on his hands, the men he'd buried, the enemies he'd burned, everything, all of it slammed into him like a storm. He dropped to his knees, gasping, screaming, but only inside his mind. "You are violent," the presence said. "You are primal. You are not supposed to be here." Delane bit down, fought it, growled through his teeth. "Then why are you here?" He hissed. The obelisk pulsed. "To stop you. You awaken too fast. You burn the stars. You kill before you question. You conquer to feel alive. We planted guardians. They failed. Now we must speak directly." Delane spat blood inside his helmet. "I'm not here to listen." "Then you are here to die." On the Vengeance, alarms flared. Toma burst onto the bridge, panting. New readings from the obelisk. It's charging something." Mara slammed her hand on the console. "Delane's still down there." "I know," Toma growled. "But whatever that thing's doing, we've got minutes." Delane rose slowly. He staggered forward. One foot, then another. "I don't care what you are," he said. "Alien god machine, and I don't care." "You think you can threaten me?" The presence thundered. "You are nothing." Delane aimed his rifle at the base of the obelisk. "I'm a human," he growled. "And we've got a habit of killing things that think we're nothing." He fired. The pulse blast hit the obelisk with a flash of white light. For a moment it seemed to do nothing. Then it screamed, not out loud, inside his skull. Pain unlike anything he'd felt, like a million knives behind his eyes. He dropped again, body twitching. But something else happened too. The pulsing stopped. On the Vengeance, all systems came online. Rios blinked. EMP field just collapsed. "I'm reading power across the entire network," Mara gasped. He stopped it. Back on the moon, Delane crawled away from the obelisk. His helmet was cracked. His vision blurry. Blood leaked from his nose, ears, maybe even his eyes. But he was alive. The obelisk dimmed. Not dead, but wounded. He tapped his comm weakly. "Get ready," he whispered. "We can kill it." But not everyone was happy about that, because deep in Earth's crust, buried in black vaults humanity didn't even know it had, something else woke up. Dominion fallback protocols, Plan Zeta automated. Sabotage codes transmitted through dormant. Satellites. Nuclear launch systems blinked. Water purification. Plants activated chemical release subroutines. Orbital. Defense systems retargeted Earth, all of it. Planned decades ago, a final card. A suicide pact. In Burnlight's headquarters, General Roth received the alert. He stared at the screen. This is it, a lieutenant beside him whispered. We don't have time to shut it all down. Roth looked up. Then we shut most of it down. He turned to the intercom. All hands. Priority Omega. Full lockdown. Brace for systemic collapse. Above Earth, in low orbit, Vengeance fired its engines and raced toward the moon. Inside, Mara turned to Marek. This was never just sabotage, was it? No, he said, voice distant. This was execution. Captain Elias Delane wasn't dead. Not yet. But something had shifted. He sat slumped inside the damaged pod, body twisted in pain, staring at the countdown timer on the warhead blinking in front of him. His visor had fractured during the fall, letting in lunar radiation that burned his cheek. His fingers trembled. His blood felt like ice, and still he grinned. He dragged himself across the moon's cratered surface, warhead cradled in one arm like a dying child, to this, the base of the obelisk. The structure no longer pulsed. It stood silent now, dark as obsidian, as if it was watching him, and deep inside his skull the voice returned. You are chaos. You are infection. You do not belong. Delane coughed blood into his helmet and spit it against the visor. Then maybe you shouldn't have come to my moon. On the Vengeance. The bridge was locked in focused silence. Commander, Rios said, watching the telemetry. His vitals are failing. Oxygen's dipping. Pulse is unstable. Not yet, Mara replied, cold and calm, though her heart pounded like war drums. He'll tell us when. You hope he'll tell us. She stared at the timer on the warhead's remote channel, counting down slowly. Delane hadn't armed it yet. He was waiting. For what, no one knew, but time was the one thing they no longer had. Earth systems were imploding. In orbit around the Earth, Dominion sabotage protocols were working like poison in the bloodstream. Transit drones plummeted from the sky over Moscow and Lagos. Atmospheric scrubbers in Brazil shut down. Nanofarms in orbit began dumping protein gel into space. And in spaceports across the world, automated fueling systems suddenly reprogrammed themselves, overloading antimatter containment fields. One station detonated above Cape Town. Second was jettisoned into the ocean by desperate engineers, before it could vaporize half the South Atlantic. This wasn't war, this was sterilization. Every system Earth had depended on, every bit of progress, every automated tool, every AI-reliant core had been rigged from the inside. It was only now, in humanity's most vulnerable hour, that the trap fully snapped shut. Burnlight HQ had turned into a bunker of desperation. General Roth, blood-soaked bandage around his arm, sat in the communications pit, barking orders like a dying wolf. I want every analog system re-engaged. Cut AI authority chain. Isolate every uplink node. I don't care if it's a goddamn toaster. If it talks to the sky, we shut it down. A young officer approached, panic in his eyes. Sir, the Greenland reactors entered auto-vent mode. They're calling it sabotage. Pull the team. Blow the cooling tower if you have to. That's 10 million people if it goes hot. What about the capital satellites? Roth didn't blink. Let them fall. We'll rebuild cities, not species. On the moon, Delane finally stood. The voice inside his mind, the obelisk's presence, was weakening. His shot earlier had damaged it, even if it wasn't visible. There were no more images in his brain, no more screams. Just a quiet pressure like it was thinking. We warned you. We gave you time. Now they are coming. Delane tilted his head. Who? He asked aloud, coughing. Those who made us. They slept while you spread. Now they will awaken. You have doomed your world. Delane activated the warhead. They will hear this. Good, he rasped. The warhead Toma had built wasn't a standard weapon. It was barely stable, a fusion of Earth tech, Dominion design, and pure Martian spite. A compact antimatter core inside a dampened pulse shell, set to detonate not outward, but inward. It wasn't meant to blow the moon up. It was meant to collapse whatever reality the obelisk existed in. Back on the Vengeance, Marek looked up from the console. His alien features paled. I feel something. Mara turned. What? He shivered. The obelisk. It's not transmitting anymore. It's receiving. Receiving what? Coordinates, Rios paled. To what? Marek looked out the viewport, voice a whisper. To something bigger. Something old. Something the Dominion fears. At the obelisk base, the timer ticked down by... Delane felt it before he saw it. A hole tore open in the space above the moon. Not a portal, not a warp, just absence. Stars vanished. Gravity shook. The dust beneath his boots vibrated like a drumhead. And from the hole, something looked back. No face. No form, just presence. A crushing, endless presence. A mind so vast it made the Dominion feel like insects. He smiled. Well, too bad. The blast wasn't visible to the human eye, but space itself twitched. A ripple of force surged out from the moon, slicing through subspace like a sword. The obelisk didn't explode. It simply folded inward, consumed by the collapsing pulse. The rift above it shrieked once, a soundless psychic scream that burst the eardrums of every sleeper on the dark side of Earth. And then, silence. Mara stood. Signals gone. Rios stared. All of it? Marek nodded slowly. The obelisk, the rift, the code threads, gone. And Delane? Silence. Earth began to recover. The Dominion failsafe networks collapsed the moment the obelisk died. It was their heartbeat. Their central key. Without it, the AI subroutines that had been killing Earth systems lost their orders. Cities flickered back online. Hospitals resumed function. Satellites realigned. Orbit stabilized. There were still fires, still damage, still death, but for the first time in days, Earth was not dying. It was alive and angry. General Roth watched the skies from the shattered window of Burnlight's tower. His comms officer reported, "We have full control again. Global AI is isolated. Dominion code purged." He didn't speak. "Sir?" He lit a cigarette with shaking fingers. "Get me every scientist who's ever looked at the stars and said, maybe there's something bigger." "Sir?" "Delane killed a god," Roth said. "Now the rest of them might come knocking." On board the Vengeance, Mara stood in the captain's chair. The bridge was silent. Rios broke it first. "So what now?" Mara stared out at the crater Delane had left behind. "Now we build." 3 weeks after the obliteration of the obelisk on the moon, Earth was still standing, battered, scarred, mourning, but standing. And for the first time in human history, the galaxy was quiet. Too quiet. The Dominion hadn't retaliated. No diplomatic response. No fleet mobilization. No condemnations. Just silence, which for some was a relief. But for others, like acting Captain Mara sang, silence meant only one thing. Something worse was on its way. The Vengeance orbited Earth in low lockstep with the solar station Sol Forge Prime, where reconstruction efforts were in full swing. Every orbital dock was lit with activity. Space elevators ran at triple capacity. Earth's nations had discarded red tape and rivalry in exchange for unity under fire. Engineers slept on floors. Fabricators melted from heat. But no one slowed down, because if humanity had learned anything, it was this: the stars don't wait for anyone. And weakness invites extinction. Mara stood alone in Delane's old quarters, staring at his captain's coat still hanging on the wall. She hadn't moved it. She couldn't. Delane had never left a goodbye message. No speech, no dramatic words, just silence and sacrifice. The man had gone to his death like it was just another day at work. And now, everything felt heavier, because she had to carry what came next. At a classified site beneath the Rockies, Burnlight had gone underground, literally. What was left of the task force now worked out of a reinforced complex that hadn't been opened since World War III. General Roth limped through its corridors, using a cane made from the twisted steel of the moon's obelisk crater, a personal reminder of what they'd faced. He met with the newly formed Terran Defense Accord, made up of Earth's top scientists, military minds, and for the first time, alien allies. 2 Vokari defectors sat at the table, a bald Osiran scribe named Ketra, and, of course, Marek, the Dominion turncoat, who now acted as humanity's unofficial translator to all things galactic and forbidden. Roth took his seat with a grunt. "We've stopped bleeding. Good. But now we ask the big question. The room waited. Roth looked up, jaw tight. What the hell did we just piss off? Marek stepped forward, placing a sleek Dominion datapad on the table. This isn't in any official archive, he said. It was never meant to be accessed by subject species like mine. These are records older than the Dominion itself. He tapped the pad and a star map unfolded. It wasn't the Milky Way. Not entirely. It was larger. Beyond the rim of the known galaxy, Marek said, there are dark systems, dead suns, places the Dominion forbade all exploration into. He zoomed in on a single blinking red sector. This system was quarantined 4,000 years ago. It held 3 planets. Now, only one remains. The other 2 were consumed. Consumed by what? Roth asked. Marek didn't blink. By the precursors. The room stiffened. They're real. Asked one of the UN astrophysicists. I thought that was just myth. Old war propaganda. They were real, Marek corrected. They still are. We've never met them. Only the evidence they leave behind. He paused. The obelisk you destroyed wasn't Dominion technology. It was precursor architecture. Left behind as a monitor. To observe. Maybe to warn. Roth leaned forward. So we blew up a galactic early warning system. No, Marek said quietly. You triggered it. Back in orbit, the Vengeance was undergoing retrofits. The mission to the moon had pushed it beyond capacity. The left railgun bay was scorched. The plasma lances were cracked from over-discharge. Its hull was dented, punctured, and patched more times than any sane engineer would allow. But they weren't scrapping her. They were rebuilding her, stronger. Toma. The ship's half-mad engineer oversaw it with the zeal of a cultist. We're going to make her sing, he said to Mara, walking her through the new schematics. Fusion-forged armor, double heat sinks, railguns swapped for arc slingers, and I finally get to mount a tachyon destabilizer on the bow. You sure that won't tear a hole in reality? Toma grinned with oil-stained teeth. Probably. That's why I'm so excited. Mara looked over the updated schematic. The ship no longer resembled its original self. It was meaner now, sleeker, sharper, like a dagger reforged in blood. What about her name? She asked. Toma blinked. We're renaming her? No, she said. I'm asking what we call this class. Toma's smile faded. He thought for a moment, then he said, Delane class. Across Earth, colonies and stations began to whisper his name. He wasn't just a captain anymore. He was a legend, a martyr, a symbol. Statues were built on Mars and Titan. Schools taught his story. Even factions that once hated the military, anarchists, activists, off-world separatists, found respect for the man who had died standing. But not everyone agreed with the growing hero worship. In the underground comms network known as the Broken Signal, someone had begun sending encrypted transmissions to ex-Dominion colonies. They read, Humanity killed a watcher. Humanity disrupted the balance. Humanity must be stopped before it invites Armageddon. Burnlight intercepted the messages too late. By the time they traced the source, 6 exiled alien factions had declared war. Mara read the briefing in silence. She sat in her quarters, lights dim, eyes heavy. Then she opened a personal file. The last words Delane ever sent her, a one-line message, recorded days before his lunar descent. Don't wait for orders, lead. The next morning, she did just that. She walked into the Vengeance's war room and called a meeting with Rios, Toma, Marek, and the newly appointed ship officers. She pulled up the star map and pointed to the sector Marek had shown in Burnlight HQ. That's where the signal went, she said. That's what the obelisk called. The Dominion's too afraid to go. Every other species turns away, she looked around. I say we go through. There was silence, then Rios laughed softly. You want to walk straight into the abyss? No, she said. I want to burn a path through it. Thus began Project Requital, named not for revenge, but reckoning a new class of ships, a new doctrine. No longer reactive, no longer defensive. Earth would not wait for the enemy to knock again. Earth would find them first. They weren't building a navy anymore. They were building an avalanche. 3 months later, at the edge of known space, the Vengeance and a fleet of 3 new Delane-class ships, Requital, Ashfall and Hammerfall II, stood at the edge of a forbidden sector. Mara, now Admiral Sang, stood on the bridge. She stared at the stars ahead, the ones that flickered wrong, the ones where light bent too sharply, the ones that felt like they were watching back. Are we really doing this? Rios asked from her side. She nodded. Yes, and if we die, let them remember who came knocking first. Any last words before we cross? She thought about it, then smiled faintly. Tell them humanity sends its regards. The edge of precursor space wasn't marked by stars. It was marked by silence, not the silence of vacuum, that cold, expected nothingness, but the silence of absence, a place where reality should be, but simply wasn't. The moment the Vengeance and her fleet crossed the galactic boundary, every sensor went blind. Scanners returned garbled noise. Star maps began to twist. Beacons blinked off. Time drifted. Even light itself seemed to bend, refract, scatter as if repelled by what lay beyond. And yet, the ships pressed on, because for the first time in 1,000 years, humanity was the invader. Admiral Mara Sang stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, staring at a star that flickered like a candle fighting extinction. She'd seen black holes. She'd watched suns collapse in on themselves, asteroids shatter, planets burn. But this was different. It felt like the laws of physics were holding their breath. Talk to me, she said, voice steady. Rios sat at the weapons console, arms tense. LiDAR's fried. Nav systems are looping. And the autoplot just tried to send us into a gravity well that doesn't exist. Perfect, Mara muttered. Toma? The engineer's voice came through, half muffled by sparks and cursing. If reality keeps hiccuping like this, I'm gonna slap an extra engine on the Vengeance and call it a goddamn multiverse canoe. I have no clue what's holding us together. Probably spite and duct tape. Mara allowed herself the faintest smile. Keep it together. Chief, we need you. No promises. Marek, standing to the left of her command chair, stared silently out at the void. His normally steady voice was distant. We should not be here. We've crossed worse lines, Mara said. This is not the Dominion. This is not politics. This is not war. He turned to face her. This is myth. They'd followed the trail of the obelisk's final pulse, a dying scream across subspace that echoed like sonar. And what it led to was not a system, not in the traditional sense, no orbiting stars, no planets. No suns, just structures, impossible shapes, floating geometries that folded into themselves, stretching across space in patterns no human had words for. Not stations, not ships. Something older. They hovered like monuments, some the size of moons, others barely visible. But all of them hummed with the same frequency Delane had heard in his mind before detonation. And in the center of it all, something moved. The fleet halted near one of the structures, a massive ring rotating silently through space, surrounding a sphere of pure light. Tell me that's not a star, Rios said. It's not, Mara replied. Stars don't float inside cages. Marek nodded grimly. It's a memory core. A what? A precursor library, but not of data, of life, history, behavior, evolution. They studied species, encoded entire civilizations into light, and then stored them here. Toma's voice cut in. So it's a zoo? No, Marek said. It's a warning label. Mara turned sharply. What do you mean? Marek's eyes narrowed. They study what destroys itself. And they catalog it, to make sure it never rises again. The Requital deployed a scout drone, no bigger than a fighter jet, stripped of AI, running only on analog input. The drone approached the sphere cautiously, drifting with passive thrusters. It made it 400 meters before vanishing, not destroyed, just erased. No explosion. No signal loss. Just gone, Rio stared. That's not defense tech. That's censorship, Marek whispered. They don't want to be seen. Mara stood tall, eyes cold. Too late. Back on Earth, Burnlight was preparing for the worst. General Roth sat in his dim-lit office, watching transmission lag bars crawl across his terminal. They hadn't heard from the Vengeance in 42 hours. Not since they'd crossed the precursor boundary. We lost them? He asked. The comms officer shrugged helplessly. Not lost, sir, just silent. Roth turned to Ketra, the Osirine defector who'd spent his life studying precursor ruins. What happens if they don't come back? Ketra met his gaze without flinching. Then Earth will burn without ever knowing why. Inside the Vengeance, something finally changed. The light sphere pulsed once, then again. A ripple moved across the entire structure field. Passing through every ship, every system, all non-human tech failed instantly. Dominion cloaking units disintegrated. AI subroutines scrambled. Plasma cores sputtered. Only human tech remained stable, crude, dirty analog survived by accident. Toma laughed over the comms. Guess building stuff out of scrap and stubbornness finally paid off. Marek wasn't laughing. They've marked you. Mara turned. What? You're now part of their archive. That pulse scanned your memories, your thoughts, your species-wide behavior. They see you now, Rios muttered. And what do they see? Marek looked at them all. A virus that learned to fight back. The light sphere expanded and then a voice. Not in anyone's head this time, but through the comms, through sound, through every speaker, on every ship. Humanity. You killed the Watcher. You broke the chain. You do not know what you have done, Mara stepped forward. Then tell us. Silence then. You do not get to ask questions. You get to listen. The stars around them dimmed. The shapes in the void began to shift. And then the face appeared. It wasn't a face in the human sense. It was a collection of light and angles and suggestions of eyes, mouths, thoughts. A shape that should not exist but did. It stared through the Vengeance's viewport, not threatening, not angry, just curious. Your kind was allowed to rise as a test, as a study. You were meant to plateau, collapse, forget. But you survived. You adapted. You killed. Mara's voice didn't waver. We survived what you set in motion. You broke the simulation. The crew looked at each other. Marek whispered, What? The voice continued, This galaxy is not real. It is a vessel. A proving ground. A recursion field. You were one of many. Now, you are the only one left. Mara's heart slammed in her chest. You mean all the others failed? Only humanity reached awareness. You are the anomaly. The precursor paused. We will now decide if you are a threat or a solution. The light sphere began to hum. A new structure unfolded in the distance, one the size of Earth itself, and inside it, something ancient awoke. The Vengeance floated in the shadow of something beyond comprehension, a world-sized structure that had just unfolded from the void like a blooming flower of metal, light and ancient thought. It didn't orbit anything. It didn't exist in the way planets did. It simply was. A fixed point in a galaxy that now felt more like a cage than a frontier, and humanity, ragged, defiant, and far too stubborn to quit, stared into the mouth of whatever made all of this possible. Whatever was about to decide if they were allowed to keep existing. Mara Sang stood frozen at the front of the command bridge. Around her, even the consoles had gone dim, responding only to the most basic of human input. Whatever intelligence was now communicating with them had stripped everything non-essential from their systems. Even the lights had lowered, casting the bridge in eerie blue gloom. Admiral, Rios whispered beside her. Orders. She didn't answer right away, because there were no tactics for this, no protocols for speaking to gods. She turned to Marek. You've studied the Dominion archives. You've seen precursor ruins. You've read about the civilizations they supposedly erased. Tell me the truth. Her voice hardened. What is that? Marek stared into the void, silver skin slick with sweat. His words came slow, measured, trembling. That is the origin node, a creation core, a rewriting engine. It doesn't hold information. It is information. It was used by the precursors to reset entire regions of the galaxy after failed experiments. Rios frowned. Reset how? Genetic sterilization, stellar reordering, memory collapse. Sometimes they erased species from history. Other times, they erased history from species. Mara's stomach turned to ice. They're preparing to wipe us, the voice returned. This time, different, sharper, more mechanical, less interested in dialogue. You killed the Watcher. You survived sabotage. You breached containment. You engaged forbidden recursion. On the forward view, the origin node began to glow, not warm light and cold. Geometric shapes that turned like massive gears in a machine, far older than stars. You are outside parameters. You do not fit expected collapse curves. You are not dying. You are not compliant. You must be evaluated. Mara stepped forward. No, she said clearly, her voice slicing through the eerie silence. We don't submit to tests. We're not lab rats. We're not simulations. She narrowed her eyes at the impossible construct. We're real. There was a long pause. Then, from every ship in the fleet, screams began to rise, not out loud. In the minds of the crew, Rios dropped to one knee. The comms officer clutched her head. One of the pilots in Hammerfall 2 was heard over the link crying, begging for it to stop. Only Mara and Marek stood unaffected. Marek turned to her, voice hollow. It's forcing the fleet into recursive memory loops, making them relive failures, moments of weakness, pain. Can we break it? I don't know. Mara clenched her fists. Then we fight it, the precursor voice returned. You value aggression. You use violence to solve complexity. You breed conflict to justify existence. Mara spoke again, voice now furious. No, we fight because no one ever gave us the choice not to. She took a step forward. As if the voice could feel her defiance. You built cages. We broke them. You planted enemies. We made peace. You sabotaged us. We adapted. Another step. You buried us. Final step, and we came back sharper. Suddenly the bridge powered up, not fully, but enough for Toma to shout over the internal channel. I don't know what the hell you said, Admiral, but systems are spiking. Power's flooding back into our reactors. Someone or something is letting us breathe again. Rios blinked, sweat dripping from his brow. What now? Now, Mara said, we show them what humans are made of. Inside the origin node, something stirred, not a machine, not exactly, but not alive either. A sentience, built from layers of ancient will, like a collective of ghosts who had traded emotion for calculation. They called it solace, and it was the precursor's final safeguard, their judge of civilizations. Solace had wiped 93,781 species from the simulation, species who'd turned inward, destroyed their planets, given into greed, or became too dangerous to the balance. It had never failed a trial before until now because humanity wasn't collapsing. It was growing stronger with every test, and for the first time in eons, Solace hesitated. On the Vengeance, Marek stood in the war room, watching as data scrolled across a holographic field projected from the alien signal. It's calculating risk factors, he said, trying to decide if Earth is too dangerous to be left alone. Is that a vote? Rios asked. Marek nodded. In a way, but we don't get a ballot. Then what do we get? A window. He tapped the field, and suddenly the origin node's outer shell twisted, not in destruction, but in invitation. A corridor opened, a literal path through the void. Mara didn't hesitate. Send a drone. Rios gave her a look. You sure? No, she said. But we came all this way. We're not turning around now. The drone entered the corridor. Inside, the laws of physics seemed to stretch, like the machine was moving through a tunnel of overlapping realities. And then it saw them, civilizations, ghost images of species long gone, ruined cities made of light. Songs echoing from lost minds, monuments bigger than mountains, hollow with memory, and at the center of it all a chamber, inside, a seed, not physical, but data incarnate. Everything the precursors knew about life, death, war, peace, entropy, compressed into a crystalline code sphere. The drone hovered near it, and the voice returned. This is the archive. Your kind may take it, but once you do, the trial ends. There is no second chance. Mara heard every word. She felt her heart beat faster. Rios looked at her. This is the choice, isn't it? She nodded. We take that seed, we leave the simulation. We become real, or we stay in the sandbox, controlled, watched, limited. And if we take it, Marek stepped in. Then we are no longer part of their test. We become something else. Something they can't predict, something they might have to fear. Mara took a breath and spoke. We take the seed. The drone moved forward. Light flared, and just like that, Earth, humanity, was no longer a subject of the simulation. It was an anomaly, outside the system, unbound, unleashed. The precursor voice spoke one final time. So be it. You are now exempt. The veil is lifted. Whatever comes next, you face it as you are. The corridor collapsed. The structures folded. And for the first time, the Vengeance saw what lay behind the simulation. A galaxy in ruins, not theoretical, not manufactured, but real. Burning, at war, with something far worse. The stars looked different now, brighter in some places, gone in others. Twisted, malformed, broken across space like shattered teeth in a giant's mouth. The illusion was gone. The simulated galaxy, the ordered systems and consistent physics, the behavior of light and gravity, the sense of cause and effect, had unraveled the moment the archive seed was taken. And the true galaxy? It was chaos, violent, ancient, dying. Admiral Mara Sang stood at the viewport of the Vengeance, staring at the unfamiliar cosmos. She should have been afraid. This was no longer the galaxy she knew. No Earth-controlled space, no Dominion borders, no familiar constellations, but instead of fear there was something else. Purpose. "We're not in Kansas anymore," Rios muttered from his console. "No," Mara replied. "We're not even in the same reality." They'd been drifting for days. The archive seed, safely stored in an isolated vault deep in the ship's engineering core, was inert. It hadn't emitted any signals, pulses or changes since acquisition. But it didn't need to. Its presence was enough. It had rewritten the Vengeance on a quantum level. Systems that once relied on human clunk and patched-together Dominion tech now responded to the ship's crew like extensions of thought. Weapons recalibrated mid-fire. Shields adjusted before threats materialized. Engines folded between subspace layers like the ship had learned how to blink. Toma, the chief engineer, hadn't slept in 3 days. He stared at the fusion cores newly awakened, patterns, and mumbled constantly about symmetry and whispers and how the Vengeance was now more idea than metal. "She's alive now," he said to Mara during the last briefing. "Not metaphorically. Not emotionally. I mean literally. The ship knows what it is. Is that a good thing?" Toma scratched his chin, eyes bloodshot. "I don't think she even knows yet. The archive seed hadn't just awakened the ship. It had also unshackled the crew. Not in power. In awareness, they dreamed strange dreams, saw impossible patterns, experienced déjà vu in places they'd never been. Some began to remember memories that weren't theirs. Others began to see shapes in the void that couldn't exist, but did. Mara experienced it too. She'd woken one night screaming, convinced she was standing on a battlefield that hadn't happened yet. Earth broken in orbit. Alien titans descending from space like gods returning to reclaim a stolen world. But worst of all were the voices, not hostile. Not threatening, just watching. Marek, the Dominion defector, had taken the worst of it. He hadn't spoken since they crossed the simulation's edge. He sat in the ship's meditation chamber, eyes wide, whispering in a language no translator could decode. One night, Toma had gone to check on him and found the walls covered in ancient glyphs, carved by hand. Not with tools, with fingernails. When Mara finally confronted him, Marek turned to her with a hollow stare. "You have no idea what you've unleashed." "Then tell me," she said. Marek stood, slow and unsteady. "The precursors weren't our gods," he whispered. "They were refugees. Long before humanity, before the Dominion, before even the first civilizations etched cave walls with firelight, something had swept through the galaxy, something vast, silent, consuming, the null. Not a species, not a fleet, an absence of energy, of thought, of life. It moved like entropy made manifest, collapsing stars, erasing memories, unraveling dimensions. The precursors had discovered it, or maybe created it, and in trying to understand it, doomed themselves. Marek's voice trembled as he continued. "They built the simulation not to control us, not to monitor us, but to hide from it." Rios, listening nearby, whispered, "And now we've just lit a flare." Mara said nothing. She didn't need to. They'd stepped outside the cage, only to realize the cage had been keeping the wolves out. They weren't alone. On the 5th day beyond the simulation, the fleet picked up a signal, faint, fragmented, older than Earth's sun, an emergency beacon, repeating a single phrase in a dozen dead languages. "Survivors. Repeat, survivors. We are what's left." The signal came from a drifting object near a shattered planetary ring. The fleet moved in slowly, cautiously. The object was a ship, or what remained of one, twisted metal. Shattered hull, strange architecture. Not Dominion, not precursor, not human. A dead civilization's last breath frozen in vacuum. But there were bodies, dozens, hundreds, all preserved by vacuum, floating near the wreck. Their faces were eerily human. Not exactly. Too long in the limbs, too wide in the eyes, but close enough to make the crew shiver. Toma said what everyone was thinking. Like us, just not In the wreckage they found a message, a data crystal encoded with layer after layer of audio, visual, and empathic resonance. It took 3 hours to translate. Then it spoke. If you are hearing this, you escaped the garden. We did too. We thought we were the first. We were wrong. A pause. Then, the null found us. It remembers, it adapts, it evolves. Do not flee. Do not fight. Do not reason. Only one thing hurt it. Only one thing it feared. A species that refused to collapse. The final line chilled them all. Be the defiance, or be forgotten. Mara stood before the archive seed in the ship's vault. It floated above the containment field now, spinning slowly, reacting to her presence. She whispered, "You knew about the null, didn't you?" The seed shimmered faintly, a ripple of color. A memory surfaced in Mara's mind, not hers, but Delane's, his final moment at the obelisk. His last thoughts, his defiance, his hope. She saw what he saw, the darkness rising beyond the veil, the false stars, the judgment, and his choice to burn it all down. He hadn't just bought Earth time, he'd bought it purpose. Back on the bridge, the Vengeance intercepted a second signal. This one was closer, sharper, not a distress call, a challenge. An image came through. A fleet. Half flesh, half metal, ships shaped like knives pulsing with purple flame. And at their head, a creature the size of a station, draped in armor grown from bone and thought. No crew, no bridge, just presence, and a single message. We remember you. We remember Earth. Your defiance has been noticed. You carry the archive. We come to erase it. They were 9 hours away. Mara summoned the fleet. 3 Delane-class warships, Requital, Ashfall, Hammerfall II, and the Vengeance, and the last of the first. They gathered above a broken moon orbiting a dark planet, using its shadow to prepare. Inside the war room, Mara addressed them. You've all seen what's coming. You've read the transmissions. You've seen the wrecks. You've felt the presence of what lies beyond the stars. She looked each officer in the eye. I won't lie. We may not survive this, but if we run, no one ever will. She paused. Delane stood alone once. Now we stand together. She slammed her fist down. No gods, no simulations, no extinction. We hold the line. We show them what humanity is, a pause. And we make sure they remember who brought the fire. 9 hours later, the stars ignited. The Null fleet descended in silence, their weapons soundless pulses of erasure, their ships humming with cold gravity wells that pulled at thought itself. But the Vengeance was ready. Her hull gleamed, her guns charged, her mind was awake. And as the first enemy ship surged forward, Mara stood tall on the bridge, raised her hand, and gave the only order that mattered. Burn them. They came without sound, without warning, without fire, because the Null didn't need fire. The first of their ships glided into sensor range like a blade through water, seamless, dark, and impossibly cold. It didn't emit heat or light, no drive signatures, no energy hum. It simply moved, existed, like a black hole wearing armor. And behind it came a fleet, 12 of them, more, 30 maybe. Each one different, asymmetrical, wrong. No two alike. Some dripped strands of metallic tissue behind them. Others rotated mid-space like they were swimming. A few shimmered, half-phased into something that didn't belong in this universe. But they all shared one thing. They were built to erase. Aboard the Vengeance, Admiral Mara Sang stood at the center of the war table. Her officers tense around her. Are those ships? Rios asked. Marek, whose hands trembled for the first time in his life, replied, Not in the way we understand them. They're alive, partly. The Null don't build things. They grow them. Targets, everything. Mara narrowed her eyes. Intent? They're not here to win, he said. They're here to end. The fleet deployed. The Vengeance took point, flanked by the Requital, Ashfall, and Hammerfall II, each a Delane-class warship retrofitted with post-archive tech. Their railguns had evolved into mass displacers. Their lances now folded energy into focused entropy bursts. Their shields pulsed with predictive intelligence, reacting before attacks landed. But they were still human ships, still outnumbered, still standing, and they would make the Null earn every meter, first wave incoming, shouted Rios. Bring lances online. All ships, Engage forward shielding. Aboard the Ashfall, Captain Irin Mikhailov barked out orders in 3 languages simultaneously. Displacer rounds armed. Plasma mesh grid up. Fire on my mark. The first null ship struck before they could react. A spear-shaped monster of bone and black steel that tore through empty space. Ignoring gravity, folding through dimensions like they were smoke. It launched nothing. Instead, space around the Hammerfall 2 rippled, and part of the ship's outer hull simply vanished. No explosion. No flash, just gone. Report! Portside armor. Erased, came the terrified reply. No breach. No heat signature. It's like it never existed. Toma's voice snarled over the comm. Null weapons aren't energy-based. They rewrite reality. Use the new armor. Run archive stabilization fields, or we're gonna be ghosts before we die. Vara grit her teeth. Return fire. All ships, give them hell. The Vengeance's new displacer cannon charged, a growling hum like a predator preparing to pounce. A bolt of inverted mass fired, surrounded by an aura of crushed possibility. It struck the null ship amidships, and the universe blinked. For 1 second, the null ship flared, not destroyed but wounded. A howl echoed through every ship, not through speakers, not through sound, through thought. A scream of recognition, and for the first time the null flinched. They feel pain, Mara said. Rios looked up. You mean we can kill them? Mara's face hardened. I mean they bleed. And bleed they did. The second wave of fire came with fury. The requital fired twin beams of focused entropy, slashing through 2 smaller null vessels. One twisted, dissolving into a smear of dark light. The other screamed, again through thought, and exploded inward, collapsing like a dying idea. But the null adapted fast. One of their capital vessels shifted shape mid-flight, growing claws the size of mountains. It latched onto the Ashfall, piercing straight through its hull, draining power before it could fire again. Captain Mikhailov activated the archive pulse failsafe, a one-use weapon that projected a memory field outward. It was made from one thing. Delane's final moment. The burst spread across space like a psychic bomb. Defiance. Sacrifice, rage, humanity's core memory of resistance, compressed into raw emotional force. The null creature reeled back, howling. It disintegrated in pieces, vaporized not by tech, but by refusal. On Earth they watched, every military channel, every deep space signal, every orbital sensor. The feed was delayed by minutes, but they saw their fleet, saw the Vengeance burning holes into impossible monsters, saw humanity winning, if only barely. And for the first time since the simulation fell, Earth didn't cower, it rallied. Volunteers surged in from every country. The shipyards went into overdrive. New vessels were commissioned under one directive: finish what Delane started. Back on the front, the battle spiraled. A third null wave entered the fray, this time not ships, but constructs. Massive floating lattices that pulsed with code, rewriting space, hijacking systems, attempting to convert human will into entropy. The archive seed responded on its own, deep in the vault. It pulsed once, and the Vengeance shuddered. Then the ship began to glow, its systems shifted. Bulkheads flexed, internal systems reconfigured in real time. Guns moved. Lances recalibrated. Armor plates melted and reformed with living metal. The Vengeance was no longer a ship. It had become a mind, and that mind had only one command: protect. The ship fired a new weapon, a spike of time, accelerated and condensed into a pinpoint strike. It hit one of the null constructs mid-core, and for a moment, that part of space aged. The construct screamed, rusted, crumbled, and died. Rio stared at the readings. What the hell was that? Toma's voice came through the calm, equal parts panic and awe. Timefield weapon. I don't know how we're doing it. The archive's running the show. Mara nodded slowly, then let it. But even as null ships fell, new ones replaced them. The enemy's numbers were endless. Their tactics adaptive. One ship folded into 5. Another learned to phase through shielding. A third latched onto requital, fusing with it, trying to turn it inside out. The battle was turning. One Delane-class ship, the Ashfall, exploded. Not in fire. In forgetting. 1 second it existed. The next, no records. No memory. Mara screamed into the void, "We are still here!" And the Vengeance responded. It roared. The ship surged forward, pushing past shields and claws and weapons, heading directly for the null command structure, a beast of spiraling wings and endless eyes. Rios looked at her. Suicide run? Mara didn't answer. She pressed her palm to the command panel and whispered one word: Delane. The archive seed flared. Every memory of Elias Delane, his strength, his voice, his sacrifice, and was amplified and projected outward like a supernova of identity. The null structure hesitated, and that was all they needed. The vengeance struck. The collision was not physical. It was existential, a war of concepts, of belief, of survival in a place beyond space, beyond time. Mara saw them, the architects, the precursor exiles. She saw what they feared, and she chose. Humanity would not be prey, would not be studied, would not be erased. We are not a variable. We are a constant. We are the knife at the throat of extinction. She reached out, took the archive's final code, and unleashed it. The battle ended in silence. The null fleet collapsed, their constructs, ships and wills shattering like glass, hit by a truth too loud to ignore. The command structure folded. Inward, dead gone, the sky was empty, but the stars were still there. Rios coughed in the smoke-filled bridge. We alive? Mara leaned against the cracked bulkhead, eyes distant. Define alive. He smiled. You still in charge? She stood tall. Then yeah, we're alive. The galaxy had never seen silence like this. Not after war. Not after catastrophe. Not after surrender. This was the silence of the unknown. A stillness born not from peace but from the stunned realization that something impossible had happened. The null were gone. Humanity had survived. No more than survived. It had fought back. And won, and now? The stars were listening. The vengeance floated above a dark, dead system. The last battle site. Debris still orbited slowly. Fragments of null constructs, frozen swirls of decomposed reality, pulsing husks of once-living metal. A single Delane-class warship stood watch. Shielded, tired, scorched, but not broken. Aboard it, Admiral Mara Sang walked silently through the main corridor, flanked by silence. Not because the ship was dead, far from it. The vengeance was alive in ways even she barely understood, but the crew needed rest. Many were in cryosleep, others recovering from neurological backlash after the archive activated its final code. Some still dreamed things that didn't belong to them. And Mara couldn't sleep anymore. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard a voice. Not the null, not the precursors. Something else. Watching. Waiting. Like the galaxy itself was holding its breath. In the command room, the archive seed floated in its containment field, now fully active. It pulsed like a heart, slow and deep. Not threatening. Not even warm, just aware. Marek stood nearby, studying the readouts. I never believed this moment would come, he said quietly. Mara nodded. What, the end of the null? No, Marek said. The beginning of us. She turned to face him. Explain. Marek walked slowly to the window, gazing out into the wreckage beyond. When the Dominion first discovered ruins from the precursors, we thought they were gods. Or tyrants. We feared what they'd left behind. We thought the null were their punishment, some kind of divine retribution. He paused. But the archive tells a different story. Mara raised an eyebrow. What kind of story? Marek turned back to her, eyes unreadable. The precursors weren't rulers. They were scientists, explorers. They created the simulations to test species, yes, but not for control. They were desperate. The null was consuming everything. The simulations were shelters, labs, maybe even breeding grounds for soldiers. Mara asked, for hope. The bridge lit up a long-range ping. Not from Earth, not from Dominion space, from outside. Rio stumbled in, eyes wide. Admiral, we're getting a signal. Not human, not Dominion. And it's old, like free archive old. They put it up. The display cracked to life, a blue starfield, slowly rotating glyphs, a female voice and calm, synthetic, translated across the system. This is Beacon 9 of the Precursor Exile Chain. To those who have passed the trial, you are not alone. The war is not over. We remember, the signal repeated, then faded. Rios turned slowly. Did they just say we're not alone? Marek's hands were trembling. The exile chain, he whispered. It's real. I thought it was legend. What is it? He looked up. The precursors who refused to flee. The ones who stayed behind when the others ran. The ones who kept fighting. Over the next 6 hours, Vengeance decoded the coordinates hidden within the signal. They pointed to a sector outside the known edge of the galaxy, a place sealed by natural singularities, unreachable without archive-level tech. But now Earth had the key. Mara stood over the navigation table. A three-dimensional projection of the sector rotated slowly, wrapped in layers of gravitational storms, folded stars, and black matter fields. Toma appeared beside her, holding a tool in one hand and a half-eaten protein bar in the other. We can punch through barely. We've got enough juice for one big FTL jump, but if this place is as bad as it looks, we may not be coming back. I know, Mara said. He smirked. You planning to say something epic? Maybe a quote. You've been on a roll lately. She gave him a look. I'm tired. Toma. Good. Then maybe you'll make the right kind of mistake. She almost smiled. Almost. Before the jump, she addressed Earth. She stood on the bridge in full admiral's uniform, hair tied back, face grim, transmission beaming back through subspace relays that would take 2 weeks to reach home, if the galaxy didn't collapse before then. Her words were brief. To the people of Earth, to the colonies, to the broken nations and the rising banners, we stood at the edge of annihilation. We faced extinction not by choice but by design, and we broke the rules. We refused to fall. Now we go forward, not as survivors but as witnesses, to find what remains, to learn the truth, and to remind this galaxy that humanity does not kneel. The jump was violent. The stars blurred, then collapsed into spirals. Time twisted. Space folded. Thought burned. Some crew blacked out. Others vomited. A few wept without knowing why. Then light, they were there. A dead system, 3 suns. All dark. Orbiting a black sphere the size of a moon. No planets. No asteroids. Just the cradle. Mara stared at it. The sphere pulsed like the archive, but differently. Older, dimmer. Like a memory fading into itself. Scan it, she ordered. Rios hesitated. Mom, I don't think it's transmitting. I think it's listening. The moment they entered orbit, the ship's lights dimmed. Not from damage. From reverence. The Vengeance adjusted itself, slowly lowering weapons, retracting offensive systems, dimming its core hum. It was like the ship was bowing. Toma's voice crackled over comms. Not doing this. I'm hands off. She's driving herself now. The archive seed pulsed, a single low tone, and the cradle answered. A beam of soft blue light erupted from the sphere, scanning the ship, then folding inward. Not aggressive, not hostile, an invitation. Mara entered the vault. The archive was floating higher now, no longer contained. As she approached, it unfolded, petal by petal, layer by layer, until it revealed something inside, a memory of a human, a man in armor, scarred, tall, Delane, or something like him. He looked at her and spoke in her mind. You've come far, but this isn't the end. This is the threshold. She tried to speak, but no words came. The null were the beginning. Not the greatest threat, only the first. The test. But the galaxy is older than test makers. There are others, he stepped forward. We couldn't fight them. Not as we were. But you've changed. He placed a hand on her shoulder. You're not here to survive anymore. You're here to lead. And then he was gone. Mara stood in silence, then turned to the crew. We go in. Rios blinked. Into that. Mara nodded toward the cradle. Yes, are you sure? No. She stepped forward. But I'm done being afraid of the dark. The Vengeance lowered into the sphere. It didn't resist. Instead, the black surface opened, like a gate. Like a mouth, and within it the true war began, not with weapons, but with memory, with identity, with the final truth about what the galaxy used to be and what it would become, if humanity didn't rise fast enough. Darkness wasn't new to the crew of the Vengeance. They drifted through the vacuum between stars, sailed past black holes, buried their dead under the dim skies of broken colonies. But this darkness, the one inside the cradle, wasn't absence. It was presence, a thinking, breathing, calculating kind of dark that didn't just hide things. It watched. The Vengeance descended into the cradle slowly, cautiously. The hull thrummed with vibration, not from movement, but from recognition, as if the walls of this ancient precursor vault were reading the ship's structure, its history, its scars. Toma whispered over the comm, voice uncharacteristically soft. She's humming. The ship's resonating with the walls, like they're remembering each other. Rios checked sensor readouts, eyes squinting. No heat, no gravity. No EM field, just this weird rhythm. It's not physics, it's a pattern. Like a song only older than language. Admiral Mara Sang said nothing. She just stared into the heart of the cradle, where something was waiting. The ship passed through the outer veil and entered a vast hollow sphere. The interior was impossibly large. Stars and galaxies could have floated inside. But there were no stars here, only machines, dormant ones, millions of them, floating in stasis like forgotten gods. Statues the size of mountains. Wings of ancient metal curled around spheres of light, spires that looked like frozen screams. Faces, not human, not alien, built from shifting geometry, all staring downward. At the center was a cradle within the cradle, a small platform, a single monolith, blacker than the dark around it, and behind it, a shape. The Vengeance halted near the monolith, anchoring in artificial gravity that hadn't existed seconds before. The crew gathered at the main viewport. Not just Mara, Rios, and Toma, but Marek, the surviving captains of the Requital and Hammerfall II, and a dozen others. They stared, because the shape behind the monolith was human or close. A figure stood motionless, wrapped in a cloak of translucent crystal, neither dead nor alive, preserved in a field of layered stasis, male old too old, yet untouched by time, and carved into the surface of the monolith at his feet were words, not in precursor script, not in Dominion glyphs, but in English, simple, blunt, terrifying. We were here before you. We broke the first chain. You are not the first to rise, but you are the first to return, Mara whispered. What the hell? The archive seed pulsed violently in the ship's core. Systems lit up across the Vengeance, as if someone had flipped a breaker, not in alarm, in recognition. The ship knew this place, or more accurately, the archive did, and then a voice spoke, not through sound, not in minds, but through memory. Everyone on board saw it, a flash behind the eyes like a shared dream. Earth, but not the Earth they knew. Deserts, mountains, oceans, unscarred, no satellites. No towers, no cities, just sky, then ships, falling from the clouds. Not human ships. Not null, something in between. People, not quite human. Not quite alien, but terrified, running, bleeding, a war, a firestorm. A betrayal, the stars turning against them, and a voice. They made us forget. They buried us in dust and instinct and pain. But the fire stayed. And now the fire has found its way back. Everyone on board awoke, gasping. Mara fell to her knees. Rios screamed. Marek vomited blood. Toma just laughed. Because what else could you do when the galaxy told you weren't new? You were a loop. Later, in the war room, Mara stood over a display of the cradle's structure. The words from the monolith had been fully translated by the archive. We were the architects. We seeded thought across the dark. We tested civilizations. We built simulations. We crafted the null to purify failure. Then we failed ourselves. Marek explained what little he could. There was a civilization before the precursors, before the Dominion, before humans. Rios frowned. Us. Maybe an echo. Maybe we're their descendants. Or their copies. The archive didn't give a straight answer. But whatever we are... He paused. We've been here before, Mara leaned in. So the archive didn't just test us. Marek nodded grimly. It remembered us. Deep inside the cradle, a corridor opened. No one gave the order. No one touched a thing. But the Vengeance rotated slowly and aligned itself with the path. As if summoned, the voice returned. No words now. Just emotion, urgency. Not warning, but choice. I'm going, Mara said. No, Rios countered. You're not going alone. I wasn't asking for permission. He grabbed her arm. Mara, she looked him dead in the eye. We've followed ghosts across the stars. We've broken gods. We've outlived extinction. If there's one final door left in this galaxy, I'm opening it. She smiled faintly. And if I don't come back, you better burn the sky finding me. Rios let go. Bring a bigger gun than last time. Mara walked the corridor alone. It was sterile, silent, but not empty. The walls showed glimpses, not images, but memories. As she walked, she saw snippets of humanity's rise, not modern humanity. Older, prehistoric humans wielding weapons against things with eyes like suns, tribes standing against celestial machines, humans riding strange beasts across shattered landscapes, a single woman standing before a precursor fleet, her body glowing with something beyond technology, and finally, the same cloaked figure she'd seen at the monolith, his hand on the earth, a tear running down his cheek, and one word on his lips, remember. At the end of the corridor was a room, round, white. In its center, a console, just like the archive's vault. But instead of a seed, this one held a mirror, and in it Mara saw herself, but not as she was, as she could become. The mirror shimmered. Data scrolled in ancient tongues, then words appeared in English. You have passed all gates. You carry the fire. Will you take the mantle? Mara didn't understand the full weight of the question, but she knew one thing: they weren't, fighting for survival anymore. They were writing the rules now. She placed her hand on the mirror. Light filled the room. Not blinding, but warm. Like a dawn after centuries of night, the walls began to change. The cradle awakened, and in every corner of the galaxy, ancient precursor relays that had been dormant since before Earth cooled began to light up, not just with power, but with a name: humanity, the ones who returned, the ones who remembered. The flame from Ash Mara walked back aboard the Vengeance in silence. Everyone turned to her. Even the ship paused. She looked different now, older, sharper, but stronger. Rios stared. What happened in there? She looked at the stars, then at him. The precursors are dead. The null is broken. The test is over. Now the real game begins. The Vengeance drifted above the cradle, no longer a warship in the traditional sense. Its hull shimmered in colors no human eye had evolved to see. Its engines pulsed not just with energy, but with intention. It wasn't just a ship anymore. It was a symbol. Across the galaxy, deep space stations blinked to life. Obelisks that had slept for 1 billion years now pulsed with awareness. Planetary cores whispered long-forgotten algorithms into the crust. Precursor relics unfolded their wings and turned toward Earth. The cradle had announced the heir, and the galaxy was listening. Back on Earth, the reaction was chaos and awe. 1 minute, humanity had been clawing its way out of another resource war. The next, they were receiving transmissions from the edge of existence. Every satellite, telescope, AI, and scientist tried, and failed, to explain the impossible. Earth was no longer in the dark. The planet's surface began to change, not violently, but gradually. Underground ruins awoke. Long-dead satellites reactivated. The moon's hidden vault opened and began to transmit, and all across the world, people dreamed, not of the future, but of things before the first sunrise. Admiral Mara Sang sat in her command chair on the Vengeance, staring at the new galaxy around her. She didn't feel like a soldier anymore. She felt like a witness to a beginning, and maybe an ending. Rios stepped beside her. He looked exhausted but couldn't stop smiling. We're legends now, Mara shook her head. We're trouble, he chuckled. Same thing. Behind them, Marek approached, his face pale, eyes glassy. There's movement, he said. Far edge of the precursor corridor. Something's coming. Null. No, something older. Mara stiffened. Older than the null? Marek nodded. They call it the Forgotten Choir. It began as a vibration, then a song, a low, continuous harmonic note that traveled through space not as sound, but as memory. The systems on the Vengeance couldn't record it, couldn't process it. The AI refused to analyze it. Toma had tried to study the waveform and ended up blind in one eye for 7 hours. The song wasn't a weapon. It was a presence, and it was coming. One of the old precursor beacons lit up at the edge of the cradle, projecting an image across the fleet, a shape, like a cathedral had grown teeth, a structure, part creature, part construct, that moved as though it remembered how to walk before physics existed. It floated silently toward them, and behind it, more shapes followed, not a fleet, a congregation. The Forgotten Choir had returned. Marek explained what little he knew. Trembling, they were the original creators. Even the precursors only guessed at them. The choir was said to exist in the universe before this one. They built thoughts into matter. They could write laws of nature like code. Why are they here? Rios asked. Marek turned to Mara. They heard the archives call. You woke them. Mara stood. She didn't feel fear. Not anymore. Instead, something older stirred inside her. Not violence. Not survival. Leadership. They're here for the same reason as the Null, to see if we're a mistake. Toma joined them. Do we have a plan? Mara nodded. Yes. We give them the same answer we gave everyone else. She turned toward the stars. We are not a mistake. We are the fire that survived. And we've already passed every test. The choir didn't attack. They sang. The note entered the Vengeance's systems. Not corrosive, not hostile. More like a question, a final one. And Mara answered. She stood alone before the archive, now fully awakened. Not just a seed, but a gateway. It showed her everything. Every species erased. Every war started for balance. Every system wiped clean to maintain an order that never worked. The choir had preserved the galaxy by stifling it. Now they were asking, will you continue our work? Will you balance life with destruction? Will you reset what fails? Mara's jaw clenched, and then she said the only thing humanity could ever say. No. She reached into the archive and changed it. The precursor systems had been built for control, but she rewrote them with chaos, with emotion, with choice. With the most dangerous thing in the galaxy, free will. The choir screamed, not in pain, but in shock. No one had ever said no before. Across the galaxy, precursor systems unlocked. Species in hiding emerged. Worlds sterilized long ago began to thaw. Simulations were shut down. Reality, for the first time in eons, became real again. The choir retreated, not defeated, outgrown, and Mara. She stood tall aboard the Vengeance, staring at a galaxy that no longer belonged to its architects. It belonged to its children, to those who had survived fire and betrayal, to those who were never supposed to succeed, to the ones who proved them wrong. A year later, the Vengeance is docked above a rebuilt Earth, now glowing with technological wonders from 1,000 forgotten ages. Humanity has changed, but not lost itself. Children grow up speaking precursor code alongside human languages. Ships leave for stars once forbidden. And in orbit, a statue of Elias Delane watches the stars. On its base, the words "born in chains." Rose in fire. Free by defiance. Mara visits his monument alone. She lays her hand on the cold stone and whispers, "We made it." Behind her, Rios approaches. "They're asking for you," he says. "Who?" He shrugs. "Everyone." She nods once, turns to face the stars, and walks forward, into a galaxy finally free to decide what it wants to become.